Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. This is the WRDN Morning Farm Report. I'm Brian Winnekins. Joining us today is Wisconsin Farmers Union President Darrin VonRuden as we talk about the 90th Wisconsin Farmers Union Convention that was held this past weekend. Thank you to Compeer Financial, also Animal Wellness Center of Buffalo Valley, Annabis Silo, Osteoplastics Synergy Co-op, and A&J Agronomy for helping to support our newsmaker segments this morning. And Darrin, thank you for joining us. Well, a pretty interesting convention that had to be held like we're doing this interview via Zoom.
Yeah, it certainly was. Early on in the process, way back in August of last year, we started looking at the possibility of having to have a virtual convention. And so we just started planning that right away. And then looking at the numbers coming into November, December, just wasn't looking like it was going to get better. So moved everything virtually. We actually had all of our annual meetings last fall virtually at the local chapter levels too, just so that we didn't have to worry about spreading the virus, and then also just to get people used to the Zoom atmosphere and what that really looks like. So we had a really good convention. 170 plus members participated virtually. And as you said, it's first ever virtual state convention. We're hoping that it doesn't have to be that way, because as humans and as Farmers Union members, we like to be able to talk with each other, shake each other's hands, and just feel the emotion in the room. And it was definitely different, but through the process, I think we had a very good discussion. Members got to speak their voice on the issues that were very important to them. And we actually took longer during the discussion of policy this year than we do when we're in person. So was that because of some of the rules that we'd set up? Probably, but it was overall, a very successful convention.
What were let's talk about some of the policy issues. What were some of the bigger issues that I guess were discussed and or passed for policy?
So probably our longest discussion happened around ethanol, and we were discussing whether or not that it should be a special order business, and because of the rules we'd set up, it couldn't be a special order business. But certainly looking at what's been happening over the last 4 or 5 years with prices for corn and soybeans too, it's becoming a bigger issue. And can ethanol be one of those products that actually helps the corn producers receive a better price for their corn that they produce? And with the new data that's coming out, looking at some of the positives about ethanol, the more ethanol that's in gasoline, the cleaner it burns. And so we need to start looking at how that can be beneficial to some of the larger metropolitan areas. The E10, E15 mandates are there, but should we be looking at a higher blend? And some of the studies that are coming out of South Dakota are showing that the E30 is actually the cleanest gas that can be burnt. So we need to be looking at those ideas. So a lot of discussion around that. Of course, we have some members that aren't big fans of ethanol too. So it really makes that discussion more lively. And I think we spent 55 minutes, something like that, on the ethanol debate over the weekend. And so, we ended up, and we're not sure for sure yet, because what we ended up doing, some of our members don't have good quality rural broadband access, don't have good phone access needed to use apps on your smartphones. So we ended up doing a paper ballot, and the paper ballot is not going to be counted until next Tuesday, February 9th. So we actually won't know how our policy ended up on the voting process until after February 9th.
Talking with Darrin VonRuden, president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning about the 90th annual Wisconsin Farmers Union Convention that was held via Zoom over this past weekend. Darrin, you mentioned it, rural broadband. I'm sure that was also another topic because obviously it affected your convention.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of those things that if the Walker administration 5-6 years ago would have accepted the money that was coming from the federal government to, expand rural broadband and expand broadband in general, we might not have had to do the paper ballot thing. There might have been enough options for members to actually participate through either Zoom or their cell phones. But being that broadband access is still a big issue, especially in northern third of the state of Wisconsin, we're going to continue fighting about that. That was actually one of the easier discussions because our members are all totally in favor of it, whether they have good broadband like we have here in our area and other parts of the state. But we certainly have to make sure that we continue to keep that as a spotlight and get that accomplished. We always compare it to the electrification of rural America in the 30s and 40s, and why are we using that similar model for broadband? Because it's one of those things that really is becoming a necessity if we want to compete in not only the statewide financial part of our businesses, but internationally, really, broadband is a critical piece of that.
Talking with Darrin VonRuden, president of Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning. Darrin, obviously the 2020, the pandemic, it affected the convention, but it really did have some effect on agriculture, really on both ends of the spectrum, from the producers on the farm to the consumers at home, because of the supply chain disruptions and that sort of thing. Did delegates talk about that during some of the policy discussions?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that, the supply chain disruptions mechanisms directly, but we do have quite a section on antitrust and monopolies. And through that discussion, talked about how we really need to redefine our supply chains and also, look at the structure of agriculture in general, and not just at the farm level, really at all levels of the supply chain. Because as we continue to get bigger and bigger, I think COVID-19 really showed one thing, that when you're so dependent on one entity for your food supply, or even for purchasing your products, when they have issues, it disrupts the whole chain. So won't we be better off with a more diverse agricultural sector, which means more farms and more packing plants, more milk processors, rather than the current mechanisms that we're going to, which is less and less. Our members are certainly in favor of the more diverse, more all the way up and down the chain, to make sure that the consumer, number one, gets a high quality product, but number two, has an adequate supply of it too.
Talking with Darrin VonRuden, president of Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning. Darrin, obviously new administration and trade. Obviously, there's the potential for a complete 180-degree turn here in some of our trade policies. Maybe trying to get back into what was once known as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Obviously, the UK leaving the European Union, and so now the US and UK trying to put together a type of trade agreement. Talk about some of the trade issues that delegates talked about.
Yeah, so we certainly want to see fair trade, not necessarily free trade. The talk is always free trade, but nothing in this world is free. Even our time on the radio here now it's costs something. So that's why you have advertisers. But to look at how each nation treats their workers, their farmers. We shouldn't be pitting farmers of the U.S. against any other country's farmers. If those farmers can produce the same products in their home countries and sell it for a profit, they should be able to do that. Some of the trade agreements that we've seen in the past haven't necessarily allowed that. And then when you look at the workers' movements too, workers need to be paid a fair wage so they can afford to have health care, they can afford to have a decent house, and afford the food that they have to buy to sustain life. So, really these trade agreements need to be fair, and we shouldn't have the big brother pushing down on the smaller brothers saying that, no, you're going to accept this. And that's what we've seen in some of the other trade agreements. We certainly have to worry about some of our main competitors, but let's go into it with the idea that we're going to be fair in this whole process, and we don't have winners and losers. So, we should all be winners in this process.
Talking with Darrin VonRuden, president of Wisconsin Farmers Union this morning. You mentioned workers. Was there a discussion about immigration? Because again, it looks like we might have a 180-degree turn on immigration, specifically for farm workers. And in Wisconsin, that H-2A program is kind of difficult for dairy because we don't have a harvest season. It's year round.
Right, yeah. So, immigration has not been a big issue for the majority of our members. We certainly have a few that are keeping an eye on that, and we feel that our immigration policy is good. Nothing changed in that this year, so it was not a big discussion topic at all. But certainly, in the hospitality hour that we had afterwards on Saturday afternoon, there was some talk about looking at how to get that playing field a little bit more level too, so that folks that are coming into the country legally feel safe. There's even immigrants that have done all the proper paperwork still are not feeling safe in what they're hoping is their new homeland and their new country. And so we got to look at how to, let people into the country safely, and then also make sure that they do follow the rules. The economy, the capitalist mentality that we have certainly drives some of the immigrants that aren't identified or don't have papers. There's just that whole capitalist mentality that let's do everything for nothing, and that's going to make that problem worse. But I think the new administration certainly has some good ideas. Can they be implemented? Will the House and the Senate actually work together to make things better for the country, or are we going to continue in this stalemate? Is yet to be seen.
Darrin, you mentioned the new administration. Was there a lot of talk among members at the convention about things they would like to see from the new administration? They're talking a lot about having agriculture be part of, fighting climate change and that sort of thing. So was there a lot of discussion about that? It appears we'll have Tom Vilsack returning as Secretary of Agriculture. So what are some of the expectations from members for the new administration?
Well, we certainly want to be a part of that process on climate change, climate actions. That was one of our 5 special orders of business. And, we feel that farmers can really be a big part of that process and how we move forward. And when you look at the carbon market that's being developed right now, there's just some strange things happening in that field. And for farmers to really be a part of the process and be, a part of helping create a cleaner world, we have to be in that process from the beginning. So we're asking for, the administration and the Secretary of Agriculture and the Department of Agriculture to really engage farmers in that whole process and what it looks like, what it should like. North Dakota Farmers Union 10, 12 years ago had a carbon credit program where they signed up over 1 million acres and paid farmers for carbon sequestration for the practices that they had started on their farms. So, let's look at something like that versus some of the markets that are out there right now that just really don't have any teeth to them whatsoever. We've got to be doing something that's right from day one versus making it look like something is being done when in reality, really nothing is.
Finally, Darrin, with once you get all of the paper ballots back and all of the different items are voted on, then all of that then will be basically sent up the line for the national convention coming up?
Correct, yes. And then that's coming up the last day of February here and the first few days in March. And that's going to be a virtual convention too. We were scheduled to go to San Francisco, but some of their local ordinances there just weren't going to allow us to even really have a board meeting. We got 27, 28 members on the National Farmers Union board, and just those numbers were going to be too big for some of the spaces they had. So it's going to be virtual. And yeah, the policy committee at National has got a lot of their work done, but we're one of the last states to have a convention. So our language usually gets included in the necessary spots within the National Farmers Union policy.
All right, Darrin, again, thank you for joining us. Hopefully next year we'll all be able to meet in person instead of through computer screens. I would be looking forward to that.
Yes, and we are too. Our whole membership, that was one thing with the social hour. We probably should have scheduled it for 3 or 4 hours because the communication between members and just the conversation could have went on a lot longer than it did, but we were sticking to a schedule. And so if people had more to say, but we weren't able to continue with that process. But yeah, we're just looking forward to being able to talk to each other face to face and shake hands and rub shoulders. That's all part of what we need to see, but we've got to beat this crisis first and get rid of the COVID issue.
Darrin VonRuden, president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. You're listening to the WRDN Morning Farm Report.